Hello, once again we have a really cold wind outside the window, and actually the weather is probably the worst in last 5 years, because we've got even snow here that is really rare, and seeing snow falling on the palms is a pretty surrealistic view. Anyway, I hope that Rode microphone will do the trick and that wind sounds and whistles won't spoil this video, because today I've got a really interesting earphones for review. It's Dunu Zen. Some time ago, when I reviewed Shozy Black Hole, I said that probably we'll see the renaissance of single dynamic drivers in near future, because many manufacturers found the ways to create sophisticated designs and technologies advanced, and Dunu Zen is a good example of that, because here they used just single dynamic driver but with some really complicated diaphragm material. So they coated diaphragm with carbon nanotubes using some sophisticated technologies. I can't go deep into the details because I don't remember the details of the process, but it's described on the Dunu's website, so I will add links to the description. You can check it out if you're interested in the description of the technology process. But for us it's more interesting that Dunu here implemented their ideas in the acoustic treatment of this driver and created good shells and so on. So basically they created pretty expensive dynamic driver in ear monitors. It cost $700, but they definitely tried to do the best to give the maximum value for that price, and let's have a closer look. Package is pretty attractive. You can see big black box. Here are additional technical specifications. So 112 decibels of sensitivity, 16 ohms of impedance, pretty nice figures. I'd probably even prefer 32 ohms of impedance, but anyway, 5 Hz, 40 kHz frequency response, that is pretty good. And high purity monocrystalline silver plated copper leads wire, so good cable here used too. So nice specifications. And traditionally inside of the outer box you'll get the inner box where everything is organized nicely. So top layer are earpieces themselves and a stock cable. So let's take them out and put that aside. Underneath we'll get these tips in the organizer, we'll get the replaceable sockets. You can see that Dunu used here their modular system with different connectors, and additional accessories here. So microfiber cloth for polishing and nice leather case. Inside there's double pouch for storage, because they are metal and have some nice coating, so I think it's a good idea to use some protective pouch to avoid scratches. And few additional set of tips. Also airplane adapter, not sure is it necessary. So white silicone tips and pair of foams, cleaning tool, short clip, and 6.3mm adapter. I don't know why Dunu didn't make it as a additional jack connector here, but anyway, let me remove it from table. In terms of design, earpieces are great. They are a bit heavy because they are made of stainless steel, if I remember right, but they are done nicely. Dunu uses that shape that they perfected for many years, so main shell is cylindric and they have additional cylinder with connectors and spout, so they should be oriented inside of ears this way, giving really good proper angle of cable and that will give a nice comfortable fit. Spouts have slightly above average length, so sound isolation is pretty good. Of course, it won't be enough for public transport, but on the noisy street it will be okay. They are semi-open because here are vent holes, they are using open acoustic treatment, but still sound isolation is pretty acceptable for public transport or for noisy street. If you need some superb sound isolation, of course you need to consider something like Etymotics or Campfire Audio Comet, some models with deep feed. So there is a lip for holding the tips, protective grill, so all that parts are done nicely, and level of execution, level of work with materials, with metal is superb. So Dunu definitely knew how to create earphones, they do it for many years, and Zen is a good example of their experience in that area. Cables are made replaceable, of course here used MMCX connectors, so you need to look at letters to distinguish left and right. You can see that connectors are matching the overall design of the shells, giving pretty good premium look and feel. And here they are. Stock cable is of course nice, it's good in terms of materials and it's good in terms of comfort. There are ear hooks that protects you from the microphonic noise. Also it provides better, more secure fit. Cable is pretty thick, but it's about average in terms of softness, not super soft and at the same time not super hard. You can see that they even put some protective film around the splitter and chin slider, so many surfaces are mirror polished, so it looks attractive, but perfectionists can find all that fingerprints a bit disappointing, but still I think it's better to enjoy that. And after the splitter it goes down to their to Dunu's proprietary system of replaceable jacks. So let me grab one. I forgot to pull it outside, so what we will need, probably I will use 2.5 millimeters because I'm planning to pair them now with Astel & Kern Ultima. And the connecting system is pretty nice, so you just see where here is the notch and here is a groove, and you need to match them and just insert, click, and it's fit and it holds well. To remove you just need to put this outer ring and it will be disconnected. So nice comfortable system of swapping jacks. Of course resulting connector is a bit big, but still anyway it's really good solution to make cables universal. I really appreciate companies trying to do that right now. So in terms of design, package, presentation, accessory set and all that stuff, earphones are done on the superb level, probably matching that price tag at 100%. And of course about the sound, I gave these little beauties about 40 hours of burn-in and there were slight changes. Bass became a bit tighter and treble changes representation a little bit during first 20 hours. But after that sound settled, so probably they don't require some super extended burn-in. More important is to spend some time finding a proper tips. For me the best result achieved with that white silicone tips that were in the separate bag inside of case. Both black and gray tips that were put in that organizer fit a bit worse for me. But of course, I encourage you to experiment with different tips, because usually single dynamic driver in-ear monitors are really responsive to that, and maybe some third-party tips can do the trick. In one of reviews I mentioned inverted tips mode. I will need to read about that a bit later on Head-Fi. So interesting idea. But anyway, for me the best result is with these white tips, and I will describe sound with them. In terms of tuning, it's a really organic, natural representation, but with a slight V-shaped and accented signature to make it more fun and more engaging. At the same time, thanks to using just a single dynamic driver, the tuning is really coherent without that driver overlaps, without loss of detalization, and so on. So really nice and good dynamic signature of dynamic drivers, pun intended here. And of course, thanks to the really technical drivers used here, they have a good resolution, so it's not that typical inexpensive V-shaped signature that veiled the mid frequencies or something like that. But anyway, let's have a player on the table to show some examples, and let's talk about the sound. Bass is accented. It has probably it's average in terms of accent. It's not bass head model, but accent is pretty noticeable. It's not the minor, but not the huge. Low frequencies have a good depth, going almost at the maximum level, and at the same time they show good tightness, good amount of small details and small nuances, so they are really good with acoustic instruments, with all that stuff that has rich overtone saturation. It's not balanced armatures in terms of resolution, so they don't trying to be super fast or super dry. It's still dynamic driver, and it shows all the power of dynamic driver. Weight, impact, kick, and so on. It's really pleasant with electronic music, but definitely it shines with acoustic instruments like some brass instruments, I don't know, double bass, wooden instruments, so all that instruments that have some materials, some real resonance, and so on. And that's actually why, as an example track, I selected the Ondekoza. It's Japanese drummers, and in this track, Odaiko, they have a big drum, and these earphones sounding really engaging with it. You will get all that sense of big resonating membrane, delivering a lot of different nuances in sound, both in the low frequencies and in higher overtones area. Mids are organic and really well balanced. They have good resolution, but they're not focused on the micro contrast. So it's not typical balanced armature or hybrid tuning, it's more dynamic driver, and that means a really good focus on the macro dynamics and on the emotions. They are really good in delivering emotions, they are really good in distributing weight, so really proper amount of weight. They a bit compensate if track is lacking proper weight, but not exaggerating the mass of instruments, the weight of instruments, the weight of vocals, so just a bit of hint here. They are detailed but not focused on the micro contrast, meaning not dry sounding, not focused on the absolute monitoring representation, but on the emotions. But at the same time, they definitely technical enough to represent the small nuances of the instruments and all that other stuff. Imaginary stage is definitely above average in width and in depth, not the hugest one, but pretty big, and it builds really nice and organic with good depth layering and good sound sources distribution in the space. Of course, for the in-ear monitors, not for the full-size headphones or for the speakers. And as an example, for the mid frequencies, we've got unusual track. No, not this one. Yes. Corpo-Mente, Dorma. If I remember right, Corpo-Mente is a side project of musicians that are more well known as Igor, that avant-garde experimental French group that mix everything. And actually in Corpo-Mente they also doing all of that. Absolutely insane female vocal with really wide range, with complex parts. I thought that it actually, when I first listened to this album, I thought that parts of that tracks can't be performed live, but actually there are records on YouTube, live in studio, so yes, they are performed live, and that makes them absolutely impressive. This track can be good test track both for low frequencies, because they have some nice deep impacts. It's a good track for the treble, but here I selected it as a track for the mid frequencies because it's sounding nice with lot of nuances in that vocal and in interesting instrumental parts, and these earphones deliver it nicely thanks to their good macrodynamics and thanks to the good highlighted emotions. This track definitely benefits from such representation. And treble here, treble is accented and probably for treble sensitive persons it could be a bit too much, but I'm not a treble sensitive, so for me it's a really good amount of high frequencies, nicely balancing low frequencies, so in this aspect they sounding really well balanced for me. They have a pretty good treble extension, but at the same time higher treble is a bit represented in a bit relaxed manner. Probably it's done on purpose, so all that compression artifacts won't be so noticeable, but at the same time extension is good, and that means nice amount of overtones, nice amount of small details, and layering is good, not great, but good, and that means that they're really good in playing that small decays and small nuances. So it's also plays its role in building imaginary stage, and also what is important here about the treble, they have a good resolution, but that's definitely not a balanced armature type of treble, not that absolutely crisp and lightweight treble. It's technical dynamic drivers, meaning good resolution, but attacks in decays a bit slower than balanced armatures does, but still pretty nice, airy, and balancing low frequencies fairly well. But still keep in mind that if you're super sensitive, they can be a bit too much for you, but if you're not, they won't. And as an example, for the treble, I've got George Michael, Symphonica. You know, when I was about, I don't know, 20, 25, I thought that, like, you know, rock music is great, metal is even better, and pop music is not worth attention. But now, like 15 years later, I understand that good pop performers are great, they are great artists, and their music is interesting, they do deliver a lot of complex stuff, and especially in live performance, and George Michael Symphonica is recorded live. It's a great example of working with audience, it's a great example of live performance, and that's why I like this album. I also like Sting and many other actually pop artists. I just started discovering them for me. But anyway, I selected Feeling Good. It starts with basically a cappella, and then all that symphony orchestra that is mentioned in the track title enters, and that requires good treble performance, because such live things are critical for the amount of layering and high frequency overtones, and the representation of this model suits this track nicely and gives you a good sense of presence at that live event. So to summarize everything, it's a slightly V-shaped fun signature, but engaging and nice. And in terms of pairing, they don't require something super powerful, they don't require super black background, they're not super noise picking, but still blacker background would be nice for them, but they require some good technical players, so probably I'd recommend them most of all with upper mid dubs, FIO M11 Pro, Shanling M6 Pro, Hybe R6, not Pro but 2020, and up to the entry top dubs, like up to Hybe R8 and Shanling M8. Up to that level they show their full potential. So interesting model with high potential, and we need more of that. Speaking about the conversions, actually what we've got in this price range, I don't think that there is much sense in comparing them with hybrid models like iBasso IT07 that, for example, I reviewed recently. They have balanced armatures, meaning more focus on the micro contrast and less focus on the macro dynamics, and that different representation despite the similar price range. Shozi Black Hole that I reviewed recently, Shozi is more natural with a bit bigger stage, but with a bit less fun. So this model has a bit more bass, it's a bit more accented, a bit more tighter, a bit more impactful, while Shozi is closer to neutrality, and same applies to the treble. So basically it's a matter of preferences. This one is more commonly tuned, but it's nice example of actually it's not mass market, definitely $700 model can't be called mass market, but it's a good example of V-shaped signature in the high-end segment, while Shozi is a bit different with a bit more natural and tuning, and a bit more I don't know, less colored, so it's a matter of your preferences. So for some people Shozi can be a bit dull, for others Shozi can be a bit more natural. It's a matter of preferences in the representation. I don't know, actually FIO's FD5, good example of single dynamic driver model released recently. They are more aggressive, more forward, and a bit have a bit bigger bass, but at the same time they are a bit drier and focused on the micro contrast. And what else? Actually, Campfire Audio old Vega is a bit more natural, while new Vega is a bit more warmer. Actually, not a bit, they are warmer with less treble, so different tunings. So Dunu found a good sweet spot and tailored the model that fitting it, delivering nice engaging sound, but at the same time, of course, sounding natural, organic, and so on. So I didn't test their Luna, for example, and other more expensive models, unfortunately. Maybe one day I will do that, but currently Zen is a really good experience and really good in-ear monitor that I definitely can recommend for those who like dynamic driver sound and for those who want that dynamic driver sound done in a mature and well-defined way. Thank you for listening, thank you for your attention, and have a nice day.